The calories in versus calories out method is focusing on losing weight to get healthy, but the body works the complete opposite. We get healthy, the weight loss is a side effect. So instead of focusing on just calories, focus on the quality of those calories, the hormonal response from those calories. So my stance on the calories in versus calories out approach is that it's a distraction. Focus on quality, not quantity, and you're going to be down the right direction.
Ben, it's been a while. Second time guest on the show, but it has been a little bit, hasn't it? It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, it's been 2 or 3 years since our last amazing conversation. We did a podcast swap back then, and we're doing it again now. So it's good to see you, Angela. Thanks for bringing me back.
It's great to see you too. And you have a brand new book coming out. It probably will be out maybe around the time we release this, Metabolic Freedom. I think that just speaks to everybody. We all want metabolic freedom, particularly me, my audience. It's such a great title. We're going to be talking about it today because I know that you have gone deep into the research. I think a good place to begin is I've seen you talking about the difference between a metabolic freedom and creating a metabolic prison. How would you describe those two states?
Yeah, unfortunately, most people are in a metabolic prison. They're handcuffed by food in order to have some short energy. Those are individuals who are stuck burning sugar. And of course, there's nothing wrong with burning sugar as a fuel source unless you're only burning sugar. That is a fast way to age yourself and put yourself into this metabolic prison that you just mentioned. Because when you are stuck burning sugar, first of all, our metabolism is just only using the food energy, turning that into sugar, glucose, and then using that as a fuel source. And then when our sugars drop, our blood sugars drop, we don't have energy, we get hangry, we can't focus, and we need to eat something to sustain that energy. It's not a fun way to live. Unfortunately, in the United States, and I know the UK is not too far behind, but in the United States, 93% of Americans are sugar burners. They're producing massive amounts of insulin to deal with that excess glucose. And it's not a fun way to live. It's essentially this metabolic prison. Metabolic freedom is the ability to have an amazing metabolism, the way that God designed our metabolism, that could burn sugar when it needs to, burn fat in the form of food, calories, or even your own stored body fat. I know when I travel, I don't eat any food at the airplane, in the airplane or at the airport. I'm metabolically free where I could just fast and allow my body to tap into body fat. And then when I eat, I feast. So I go back and forth from burning sugar to burning fat. To me, that's what metabolic freedom is. And the book outlines exactly how to achieve that.
It's that flexibility, right, between switching between fuels, but
Yes.
also keeping that insulin under control and blood sugar regulation. I mean, I had firsthand experience of this. It's really interesting. So, when I was in my 20s, I was diagnosed with PCOS. And that at its core is an insulin resistance, right? It's a metabolic disorder, really, more so than hormonal. And when I looked at my genetics, it doesn't seem to show that I had a risk factor for it. So it was, I believe, dietary related. And when things got pretty bad. I needed surgery. I had my ovaries, like the cysts were all burnt off. I ended up having to have them drilled. So she drilled holes in them. So it's not a pretty experience. And that was what it took in order for me to gain my menstrual cycle back. But then when I got that back, I was really focused on, from a dietary perspective, how can I optimize this for fertility? And fortunately for me, a month after surgery, I fell pregnant, which is amazing. And I think the misconception, right, is that if we don't have good control over our metabolism, then we're going to look overweight. I certainly didn't. I was slim and fit and looked fine, which I think is very common. But I was having all these problems. And when I learned to control my blood sugar so much better, that has kept my menstrual cycle in check until here I am at 49, coming out the other side of it, when you're going to see some disruption anyway. But it's been life-changing for me. So it's really amazing.
It's perfect, a testament of that, right? You mentioned, keeping your blood sugar and insulin in check. That is the first starting point. I make the case that high levels of insulin, it's the first domino to fall that leads to all these metabolic diseases. It starts with high blood pressure, you start gaining weight, and then it's pre-diabetes, and then it's full-on diabetes. And once you're diagnosed with diabetes, it opens up this entire world that you don't want to be in, that increases your chances of cancer, heart disease, and of course the amputations, the vision loss, all the things that are associated with, are commonly found with diabetes. So it starts with insulin. What's interesting, Angela, is that when I was looking at the studies, I referenced a few of them in the book in regards to insulin. You could have full-blown insulin resistance, like you did when you had PCOS. You could have full-blown insulin resistance, also called hyperinsulinemia, for, on average, 6 to 14 years with perfect fasting blood sugars, perfect A1C levels, because your pancreas is so busy just producing massive amounts of insulin to clear that glucose until it cannot, until your cells, your insulin receptor sites go deaf to the screams of insulin. Then your blood sugars change so dramatically. Then it's prediabetes, diabetes, and all the other things I mentioned. So it starts with insulin. One of the most important tests that I recommend getting done is a fasting insulin test. You want to see that in the single digits. That shows you are insulin sensitive. And if it's higher than 10, there's some work to do. If it's over 20, you got full-blown insulin resistance. So I encourage your audience to get a fasting insulin done. Let me ask you this, Angela. How easy is it to get a fasting insulin done in the UK?
Do you know, I literally just had one done last week. It's gotten a
Awesome.
lot easier. It used to be a test that you could only get in London or one of the big cities. Now, fortunately, they're making it easier. So you can get
Great.
fasting insulin alongside HbA1c and C-peptide and a couple of others. Yeah, you can get them done quite easily now, which I think is pretty amazing. But it's not in standard healthcare practice to look
Right.
at that. And as you say, you know, insulin resistance happens way back. I do think us women, and it wouldn't apply to every woman, but I think we have a slight advantage insofar as we have a menstrual cycle and we can check what's going on. And because of the way insulin, you know, responds and interacts with luteinizing hormone, for me, that just stopped ovulation. You know, if insulin's high, luteinizing hormone kind of can't rise to the same level to ovulate. That's not necessarily true for every woman, but I think that maybe we're a little more conscious of our health because we get these signs. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, if you're looking for them.
Yeah, and I love that. C-peptide, fasting insulin, A1C, those three markers you mentioned, those are great. Like everybody get that at least once every year. And even in America, if you pay out of pocket for those tests, fasting insulin, for example, it's not that expensive. It's a very cheap test. So you just have to request it. There are workarounds, and I'm glad that it's becoming more available in the UK as well.
Yeah, you have to pay out of pocket, as you say.
Yeah.
But I think, as you were saying there, it's really, really important. That's the thing.
Yep.
So when we're looking at this for people, a lot of people, as you say, they're burning sugar as their primary fuel. You talked about many of the things that are going on there. It's increasing risk of things like cancer, for example. My father died of end-stage renal disease. That is not pretty on the back of type 2 diabetes. It really is a very difficult thing to go through. And there's a lot of suffering. And I think this is the thing, is people don't first realize how much stored suffering is potentially going to occur as a result of some of these lifestyle choices. One of the things that's helped me has been really focusing on fitness, because muscle mass makes a big difference to insulin sensitivity. Can you explain a bit about that for our listeners?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you know, me and you have a similar story with our fathers. My father also died from the complications of diabetes, similar to your dad. And that is the truth about diabetes. It's actually pretty rare to die from diabetes. It's really what diabetes leads to that ends the person's life. And saw the same thing with my dad. Lifestyle disease, treated with medication, huge mismatch. But to your point, muscle mass, absolutely. I make the case for that. I make the case for protein, getting enough dietary protein, essential amino acids, because the more muscle mass you have, and you talk about this a lot, the more muscle mass you have, essentially it's like a sponge that absorbs the excess glucose, meaning you don't have to produce as much insulin to clear the glucose, because you're actually going to just use your muscle mass to absorb that glucose. So you have you're more insulin sensitive. Of course, it prevents osteoporosis, osteopenia, slips and falls when you get older. That's of course that's important. But as it relates to the metabolism, here's something really interesting. We hear a lot of people. I hear a lot of people share like, oh, my metabolism is so slow because I'm 40 years old or I'm 50 years old. The older I get, the slower my metabolism gets. And when I looked into the studies, Angela, it's actually interesting. The studies actually show that there are not, in general, for most people, major changes in our metabolism until we get to age 60.
I
Then at
saw
that
this
point,
research too.
what? Say that
Yeah,
again?
I saw this research too. It's
Yeah.
super interesting. Yeah.
Super interesting, meaning no significant changes until we're 60 years old. And at that point, there's about a 0.7% decrease in the metabolism every year after that. But here's why that happens. The study showed because of the loss of muscle mass. So if you build lean muscle mass and maintain it by age 60, you could essentially be 90 years old with the metabolism of a 20-year-old because of the muscle mass piece. I know that if I'm consistently strength training, I just feel better. it also gives you more flexibility with the food you eat. You can have more carbohydrates if you want to, and you'll have a better postprandial blood sugar response. So I am with you 100%. Muscle mass is a major focus for me these days. I strength train. I take my essential amino acids, I take my creatine, and I make sure I hit my protein requirements in order to get to the goal I want to get to.
Yeah, same here. And I think the thing is to put this in context when people think they don't have time. You can do some pretty intense, like you can combine resistance training with high intensity and do a really good workout in 10, 20 minutes. But even
Yeah.
if you do traditional resistance training workouts and you spend 45 minutes 4 times a week, right? You could spend 5 times a week. You're going to spend a maximum of about 3 or 4 hours in the gym out of 168. Like to me, that is an investment that pays off like over and over again. And as you say, you can go out for dinner, you can have more flexibility with what you're eating, and you don't have to worry in the same way as somebody who is highly sedentary. I also saw some really interesting research recently, Ben, around people who are slimmer actually also and have better muscle mass. They have a higher VO2 max. So it seems like, being overweight or obese is also affecting that, which is our cardiorespiratory fitness, also really important. One thing I want to touch on with you is when we talk about muscle mass, just so people understand, because there's a difference between muscle mass, which is your size, and your muscle strength. So when we're resistance training, we need to be looking at both. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, and you could always test for those things, right? There's different DEXA scans and different things you can do to look at the different muscle mass, different parts of your body. And you also want to be getting stronger, to your point. So I personally have a workout program that I do at home. And, to your point, I'm not spending an hour 5 times a week. Even if you did, that's not even a lot of time in perspective of what you just said. I'm spending 30 minutes 3 times a week, but I'm really disciplined. I'm not on my phone. I'm in and I'm out. And I'm doing progressive overload. I'm making sure that my strength is increasing, and I'm not just guessing. I think I did 155 pounds last week. I'm going to go to 160. No, I'm actually looking at my previous week with the goal of increasing it safely where I'm not injuring myself. I want that progressive overload. I want to see that I'm actually getting stronger, like with the numbers. But then I also want to measure, and I have like an in-body scan where I actually measure my muscle mass. So both are important. I want to hear your thoughts on how you do it as well. But you're correct. You want to look at your muscle mass. You want to see that increase, but you also want to track your gains, your strength, and make sure that's going up at the same time as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think both are really, really important. And getting enough, you have to lift heavy to get that mechanical tension in order to like really pull on the bone as well. And particularly as a woman at my age, like I'm looking at that and protecting bone density at the same time. So I tend to do like strength work, as in the lower reps on my compound moves. So like your deadlifts, your squats, things like that. And then more of the accessory moves, I'll move more into that kind of hypertrophy. I mean, you see hypertrophy at all ranges, but I'll move into those higher reps and things. So I do a combination of both and kind of structure it over the year. You've got to keep it interesting. And as you say, you've got to have progressive overload.
Yeah.
That's key. Do you want to chat to you about seed oils and inflammation? Because this has become, who would have thought it could get quite as controversial as it has in recent times, right? So I had Dr. Kate Shanahan on the show twice. We talked about the inflammatory nature of seed oils and how the processed ones, at least, and they can have all kinds of things like hexanes and different things, chemicals, and they're not good for you. And then had Dr. Sarah Berry on, who was providing a very different stance on it after all of her research, saying that actually what she feels we know today is that they are safe and they are fine. And that they have high levels of vitamin E, which protects against oxidation. And even if we're repeatedly heating them, as long as we're not doing it too many times, it's okay. So it was both of them have quite polarized views on this and have research that they share in relation to it. I know in America, there's now a big move to move French fries to be fried in tallow. That to me, I mean, I don't think we can make French fries healthy. So I don't really understand that. I'm not sure that putting a carb with loads of saturated fat is really going to make a big difference to the way to the health outcomes. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, right? We have two opposite sides of the spectrum. I know Dr. Kate Shanahan personally. I've had her on the podcast. I haven't had Sarah Berry, but I do like her work. Yeah, there's a difference between processed seed oils and unprocessed seed oils. In other words, adulterated versus unadulterated. So a lot of the studies that are showing seed oils are perfectly healthy for you, they're looking at these unadulterated seed oils that are not processed. And it's true, they have vitamin E, and it's actually really, omega-6 fats are really important for the cell membrane. All that is true. However, the majority of the seed oils in America, probably in the UK as well, are the processed variety. And the reason why that is bad, and I at this point, I believe that's bad for you. I might change my mind in the future, but the reason why that's bad is it's simply because of the chemical structure of them. And Dr. Kay Shanahan does a great job describing this. They're called polyunsaturated fatty acids. The word poly means many, so they contain many double bonds. The more double bonds a fat has, the closely they are located to each other, the more reactive they are to high pressure, oxygen, and heat. And then we look at, all right, how are these oils processed? High pressure, oxygen, and heat, not to mention all the chemical agents that go into it. So it might be healthy before it's processed, but once it's processed, it becomes unstable. Even with the vitamin E, the amount of linoleic acid that we're consuming, it doesn't matter if it has vitamin E. Yeah, vitamin E is probably the most important antioxidant for the cell membrane. It's protective, but the amount of linoleic acid from seed oils, oxidized linoleic acid from seed oils that we're consuming, we can't keep up with that. And these oils, the linoleic acid, they stick around for a very long time. The half-life is 680 days. That's 2 years. Meaning if you stopped eating them today, 2 years later, half of them will still be in your body fat, cell membranes, mitochondrial membranes, creating inflammation. Dr. Martin Grutfeld put a study out. Dr. Kay Shanahan referenced it in her book, Dark Calories. I also put it in my book, Metabolic Freedom. Speaking of French fries, he looked at French fries that were fried in vegetable oil, and he looked at the aldehyde content produced. Aldehydes, when it's in excess, are carcinogenic, cancer-causing. When you smoke cigarettes, there's also aldehydes produced. And at the end of the study, he showed that in a 5-ounce serving of French fries cooked in vegetable oil, it produced the same amount of aldehydes from 25 tobacco cigarettes. In other words, one French fry cooked in vegetable oil is an entire tobacco cigarette smoked in terms of the aldehyde content produced. So I'm not a fan of these processed oils. I do take unprocessed, cold pressed, organic seed oils from time to time to support my hormones and support inflammation. That's going to be like organic cold pressed sunflower oil, organic cold pressed safflower oil, but I'm not heating it. I'm taking it in supplement form. I think that's very healthy for you. And I think Sarah Berry has a point there. But the majority of these oils, they're fried and they're refried. I remember my mom, she worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken when I was a kid. You guys have Kentucky Fried Chicken in the UK. It's
KFC
fried.
is called,
Yeah, KFC, exactly. It's fried chicken. And they use vegetable oil. And I remember most nights she would bring home Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was a happy kid. And then some nights she didn't bring it. And I would ask her why she didn't bring home chicken. And she said, well, I only bring it to you the first week after they've changed the oil. They would go 14 days frying that same vegetable oil over and over and over until that oil turns so black, then they change it. So she didn't bring it to me when that oil was black. But think about that. How many restaurants are refrying and refrying black oil, and we're consuming this? So I'm with Dr. Kay Shanahan here. The majority of the seed oils out there are processed. That's not good for you. But if you could find an unprocessed variety and not heat it, I'm on board with that as well. So I don't know if you have thoughts on where you stand right now with this conversation, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm like you. I take some cold pressed oils, and I think I actually interestingly use cold pressed seed oils on my skin. It's like beautiful, your skin. It does then make me think, what am I doing when I go in the sun? But I don't really burn in the sun. I'm sure by that point it's absorbed. I suppose you could say, well, when you run some of Dr. Kay Shanahan's arguments, is it then going into the cells, and could that oxidize? I mean, I don't know that anyone really has a firm answer in relation to that. It's something that I'm always kind of questioning in my own mind. I like the skin benefits of it and sort of anti-aging benefits. Where I come out, because I think it's an interesting space to watch, is I'm just still sticking with olive oil. It's full of antioxidants. I love the taste of it. I don't have any problems with it. Even if I was making a curry, I don't care if it's got olive oil in it, because I just love olive oil. And my blood work looks so good at the moment that I just don't really want to change anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm happy with what I do.
Fair. Yeah. That's the ultimate test. Like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
What does your blood work look like? And if that's all good, then keep doing what you're doing. I can tell you this. I've worked with thousands of students all across the world from the last 17 years I've been in the space. And a lot of them, I've taken them off of seed oils, and most of them report a benefit right away, like within the first week. I have more energy. I feel less inflamed by removing these processed oils. So that speaks volumes in my book as well. But the ultimate test is, how do you feel? How does your lab work look? I know a lot of these studies as well, when it comes to seed oils, a lot of them are funded by the American Heart Association, which is a big um, there's a special interest group there, and Dr. Kate Shanahan calls them the biggest fake news organization in America. And they fund a lot of these seed oil studies. And then some studies on seed oils, maybe Sarah Berry referenced them, I'm not sure, but some of these studies show that it lowers LDL-C, and that's why it's actually good for you. But, lowering LDL-C is actually not even the goal, essentially, because it's not looking at particle sizes. And LDL, we know, actually builds the immune system. If it's the pattern A, large and fluffy variety, it's great for longevity. So just because it lowers LDL-C does not necessarily mean it's doing something good. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But essentially, at the end of the day, how do you feel? What does your blood work look like? And if you're not having seed oils and you feel great, blood work looks great, keep at it. But if you don't feel great and blood work is a little wonky, you might want to remove them or reduce them and retest.
Yeah, I agree. Why not try it and see what happens?
Yes.
Let's shift gears a little bit then. I sort of alluded it to there, talking about tallow and fries, but let's talk about saturated fats, because again, this is another like super controversial area. How much I don't measure my saturated fat intake. I definitely don't keep it below a certain percentage or amount, because honestly, if there's a bit of sourdough with grass-fed butter, of course I'm going to have it because I love it. And I've not seen any deleterious effects. I think butter's great for butyrate and things like that. With meat, I eat it as it is. Although if there's a big bit of fat on a steak or like pork crackling, I don't tend to eat that. I don't actually like the taste of it very much, but I wouldn't choose to eat a lot of saturated fat, if you like, but I'm not actively monitoring it. You've obviously gone very deep on this because of Metabolic Freedom. Where do you come out on saturated fat, having looked at all the literature?
Well, we know, going back to the chemical structure, we spoke about the polyunsaturated fats, double bonds, too many, not good. Saturated fats have 0 double bonds. That's why they're very stable. They could take heat. That's why these animal fats are the best for cooking. We think about butter, ghee, beef tallow, duck fat, lard from healthy sources. They're very stable. You could use high heat temperature, and they're not going to oxidize as quickly as a polyunsaturated fat or even a monounsaturated fat. They contain 1 double bond, but I'm also a big fan of olive oil and avocado oil. I think saturated fats are amazing for you. Now, granted, you said it really elegantly and an important message earlier. Beef tallow. I mean, I'm not sure if I want to have a whole bunch of carbs and saturated fat. You don't want to do that. If you're going to have more saturated fat, ideally you want to lower your carbs. We know that high carb and high fat, not a good idea. That's the standard American diet. That's why we have metabolic disease. There's the Randall cycle that prioritizes the blood sugar. The fat pulls up in your bloodstream, raises your triglycerides, raises LPS. It's just not a good idea to have more saturated fat and more carbs. But if you're doing more keto, carnivore, low carb, I love saturated fat. I'm not afraid of it, just like you. I don't calculate it or try to hit something. I'm not avoiding it. I feel great with it. My cholesterol panel looks great. My inflammatory panel looks great. A lot of my students that also eat more saturated fat, they feel great. So I'm a big fan of saturated fat. We've been fed a whole bunch of lies. I call it in the book Metabolic Freedom, I call it lipophobia, the fear of dietary fat based off of 50 plus years of propaganda and misinformation. Saturated fat is actually so important for your health as long as you're not eating it in with a high carbohydrate meal. It builds your cell membranes, it builds your hormones. Cholesterol is vital for all of your hormones. It's vital for your brain. I love it. I eat the fat with the steak because I like the way it tastes. I put butter on the steak and I feel great. Yeah, I do. Sometimes I do. So I'm not afraid of it. I actually think saturated fat is great as long as you're doing it with a low carbohydrate perspective.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because actually Mother Nature teaches us, because if you look at it, she puts saturated fat and protein, as you say, together, and she'll put carbohydrates with, like, you can have carbohydrates with protein, right? All carbs contain a degree of protein. But the only one where I can really find sugar and carbs together is coconut. I don't think, is there another example? That's probably the only one where you can find them together.
Where you can find what together?
Where you can find fat and sugar together.
Oh, fat and sugar and breast milk. Sugar. And maybe cow's milk.
And cow's milk would be another one. But even cow's milk, the percentage isn't that high, right? So it's, it's quite interesting. So for the most part, that would seem like it's a treat, right? How much coconut can you eat before you feel sick, or
Yeah,
gobble
no,
back
you're
milk? So
you're right. It's like we could just look at what
yeah,
nature has provided us, what God has provided us, and kind of get clues on what we should be pairing it with and what we should not. I'm okay with carbs and protein. When I talk about these, like in the book, I have what's called metabolic flex days, where you actually flex out of ketosis and have a higher carbohydrate day, but it's a high protein, high carb day, low fat day. So I'm good with high carb and high protein if you're healthy, as long as the fat is low. It's when the fat is high with the carbs that's a problem.
that's when it's an issue. Yeah.
Yep.
What are the other mistakes, Ben, that you think people are making?
As it pertains to like metabolism,
Mm,
fat loss is a big industry, and I think a lot of people still focus on calories in versus calories out. And there, like, speaking about like debates, right? The seed oil thing is one thing. The calories in versus the hormone camp is a huge debate. It's been going on for a very long time. I think calories matter. Absolutely. I'm not a calorie denier, but I don't think they're the most important thing to focus on. I think hormones and inflammation are way more important. And I see a lot of people focusing so much on just cutting calories, and it distracts them from actually what really matters, which is optimizing your hormones, finding ways to lower inflammation. And I'm honestly, I'm tired of the whole calories in versus calories out conversation, because it does people a huge disservice. And the issue is that it works. When you cut your calories, you're going to lose weight. I'm not denying that, but that's only a short-term approach. What happens is your metabolism will slow down to match the energy coming in. And then most people think, oh, I just need to either exercise more or cut my calories more, or sometimes do both. And then they continue to lose weight. And then you can only do that so much until you can only drop your calories a certain
mm.
point where you destroy your metabolism. And all of a sudden, you're hungry all the time because ghrelin is through the roof. Your leptin levels have plummeted. I mean, we've seen this with The Biggest Loser TV show in the US, and study after study. Your organs shrink. The study from the Biosphere 2 project showed that long-term caloric restriction shrunk their organs. Even though they extended their telomeres, they shrunk their organs. They were miserable. So I'm not a fan of focusing on calories. It's a big mistake. Big mistake. The premise that I have is that we get healthy to lose weight, not lose weight to get healthy. The calories in versus calories out method is focusing on losing weight to get healthy, but the body works the complete opposite. We get healthy, the weight loss is a side effect. So instead of focusing on just calories, focus on the quality of those calories, the hormonal response from those calories. If you're like 93% of Americans, you are a sugar burner. You have insulin resistance. We need to eat less carbs, more protein and fat, right? That's going to give you a better hormonal response, not even focusing on the calorie part. You're going to naturally eat less food and less frequently when you eat more protein and fat, because it activates hormones like cholecystokinin, leptin, peptide YY that help you feel full and satiated. So my stance on the calories in versus calories out approach is that it's a distraction. Focus on quality, not quantity, and you're going to be down the right direction.
I love what you say there. You get healthy and then you lose weight, right? Being healthy, the side effect is that you just stay lean naturally. It doesn't really take lots of effort, as opposed to thinking I've got to lose weight and then messing up your hormones. I mean, there's plenty of people I've seen who have dropped their calories down to 900 calories, which is totally unsustainable. Even as a smaller woman, you've gone below your kind of basal metabolic rate. I don't know what you found, Ben, but I find like even the calculators, when you look at them with calories, they can be a guide, but actually how many calories you burn is so individual, because we know even with like NEAT, that non-exercise active thermogenesis, like I'm a massive fidgeter. Do you know what I mean? So like I'm burning more calories. That's this kind of type of energy, right? You're sort of twitching, you want to move around. I can't sit still for very long. That's going to be burning calories, more of the calories than someone who is, more sedentary just in their nature. And neither's right or wrong, but it's just going to be a different metabolic effect. I weight train 5 days a week. That's going to have a huge impact on my metabolism compared to somebody who doesn't. I don't know about you, but I found the best thing is actually just to figure out for 2 weeks, and probably wear a glucose monitor during this period as well, is just figure out everything you're eating and are you in a weight management spot? Because if you are, that's the amount of calories to keep you at your current weight. And then you can kind of work back from there. You've worked with thousands of people. What approach do you take with them when they want to lose weight? You've talked about getting healthy. Can you elaborate on the steps that they should take?
Yeah, the first step is to go from burning sugar to burning fat. Most people that come to me, most Americans that are sugar burners. So it's very easy. You gradually lower your carbohydrate intake while you increase your healthy fats and protein. You stop snacking in between meals. You start with 3 meals a day. And then you increase your electrolytes and minerals, because as you lower insulin, you're going to lose a lot of those minerals. So you replenish that. And you could get there in 7 days. In the book, Metabolic Freedom, I have a 30-day plan. The first 7 days teaches you these steps and shows you how to go from burning sugar to burning fat with no symptoms. So that's the first step. I love the idea of wearing either a continuous glucose monitor or doing a finger prick for your blood glucose, and even ketones. That gives you some really good data. I talk about the usage of that in the book. I use it for a lot of my students as well, because it shows you not just what food is doing to your metabolism, but stress, exercise, poor sleep. Gives you some great feedback so you can make some changes and fine tune some things. So that data is really, really valuable. And then once you become a fat burner, the second week in this 30-day plan is then we start experimenting with meal timing, time restricted feeding. The way that it's laid out is that every week there's a different plan, because I want to keep the body adapting and guessing. I want to create what I call this metabolic confusion, similar to muscle confusion, right? You talked about how you do different weights, high rep, low weight, and vice versa. You're changing up the routine. That keeps your body adapting and guessing so you don't hit a plateau. It's kind of the way I designed the 30-day plan. And there's 2 ways to follow that 30-day plan. If you're a beginner, you do it the way that it's laid out. And then there's an advanced protocol. If you're already doing low carb, keto, fasting, then you could do it this way. But that is the first step. You want to go from burning sugar to burning fat. You want to eliminate these ultra processed foods. It's really simple. When we go to the grocery store and we look at whole foods, an avocado, eggs, broccoli, there's not an ingredient list, because you're seeing what you're getting: the avocado, the egg, the broccoli. But when you go down the middle aisle and you look at the oatmeal, the cereal, the bars, there's an entire list of ingredients, because it's fake food. It's food-like substances, what I call frankenfoods in the book. And you could simply just look at the ingredients list and say, I can't even pronounce this. I should probably not be eating this. But when you look at real food, there is no ingredient list. So you want to shop the perimeter. We've heard this before. It's the truth. Eat whole foods. I always like to meet the person where they're at. I know you do something similar. Great coaches meet people where they're at. I don't want to throw somebody into the fire. You're going to do carnivore tomorrow, 24-hour fast. No, if you've never done that, first we start removing the processed stuff. We start eliminating the snacks. So it depends on where you're at on that spectrum of insulin resistance. But the first step for most people, go from burning sugar to burning fat. I could show you how to do that within 7 days.
Which is amazing. And the transformation in terms of how you feel when you get good at burning fat, it's just life-changing, isn't it? You don't have those energy dips and stuff anymore. You can concentrate on your work. You can focus better. Your mood is more stable. Like, it's so worth the investment.
Yeah, that's metabolic freedom. It's like you feel incredible. Energy levels are amazing, through the roof. You don't have to drink coffee all day, stimulants, take a nap. Like, you just feel like a rock star when you're burning fat instead of sugar. Those ketones are very powerful.
Very powerful. Let's talk a little bit about stress. This is important. You've mentioned that. You've been talking a little bit there about cortisol. Lots of people are under stress. I mean, their diet, if they're eating that standard American diet in and of itself, is causing stress on the body. But what about just daily stress in their life? How are you finding that's impacting people's metabolism?
Yeah, I love that you brought this up. On page 26, I'm going to show this on the video, but I know people are listening. On page, where is it? Sorry, Angela, I'm trying to find this graphic here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Page 29, excuse me. There's a graphic here. I know you can't really see it, but it's showing hormesis, right? Hormesis is really important to understand in perspective of stress, like you just mentioned, because we hear about stress. Stress is bad. Avoid stress. And a lot of people are too stressed out, and that is true for them. They need to lower their stress levels. But stress is actually so important for longevity, your metabolism, as long as you stay in what's called this hormetic zone. So in this book, Metabolic Freedom, page 29, I'm showing a graphic here, and it's using regular exercise as the stressor. But you could replace that with fasting, cold plunge, red light therapy, sauna, all these biohacks. They're all stressors as well. But for exercise, if you do the right amount of exercise, meaning you apply the right amount of stress, you recover, you stay in what's called this hormetic zone, where reactive oxygen species drop, antioxidants increase, activity of antioxidant enzymes increase. So essentially, you're de-inflaming your body, you're extending your lifespan. But if you do too much exercise, you now lose that hormetic curve, and the opposite happens. So with stress, it's important to apply stress and adapt to the stress. And if you're not adapting to it, then like you said, it's very important to find ways to adapt to that stress. When your body is in a high stressed state, and stress comes from three different areas: mental, emotional, physical, and chemical. When you have too much stress and you're not adapting to it, you're going to get symptoms. Your heart rate variability is going to drop, which means you're too much in a sympathetic dominant state, and your parasympathetic suppressed, which is more rest digest, that's suppressed. And you're going to store fat because cortisol signals fat storage. If your body thinks you're stressed, whether it's from going to a job you hate, being stuck in traffic, watching the news, or actually a physical threat in front of you, the same response happens. And your body doesn't want to burn fat at this point. It wants to store fat because it's not sure if you're going to survive. So let's start storing fat. And it slows down fat burning. You get that cortisol belly. It inflames you, and it lowers your immune system at the same time. So all these bad things start to happen. In chapter 6, I discuss poor sleep and poor circadian rhythm, how that increases cortisol, leads to metabolic syndrome, leads to high blood pressure and diabetes. So stress is important. And one of the things that I monitor, and I know you're a big fan of it, is heart rate variability. I think everybody should be testing heart rate variability. I test it with my Oura Ring, but there's different gadgets and devices out there. You want to work on increasing your heart rate variability. As your HRV increases, your hormetic ceiling goes with it. And Angela, one of the things that I've been able to do, of course, sleep is the most important thing there. But in terms of supplementation, high dose cyclical melatonin has been tremendous for raising my HRV and my hormetic ceiling. When I say high dose, and I talk about it in the book, Dr. John Lawrence, who is a friend of mine, wrote an excerpt in the book on melatonin. I'm referring to like 100 to 200 milligrams of melatonin cyclically. It's been tremendous for me. I think melatonin is so underrated. It's one of the most important antioxidants for your mitochondria. Every cell that has mitochondria produce melatonin. The gut produces the most amount of melatonin. So I have used it cyclically in an incredible way to raise my HRV and raise my hormetic ceiling.
And what have you seen with your HRV? Like, how much has it moved the needle when you've done that?
So when I first started testing my HRV back in 2018, my average was around 40. Now my average is around 65, 70. So I've almost doubled it. And I know if it goes down to the 40s and 45, it's not a day to do strength training workout or a cold plunge or a sauna. If it's below my average, it's one of those days where like today it's kind of below my average because yesterday I did a hard workout and some sauna. So it's a rest recovery day. So I've almost doubled it in a few years. And typically as you get older, it lowers, but for me, it's going in the right direction.
Interesting on that, on the melatonin. See, melatonin you can't get here without a medical prescription in the UK.
Really?
Yeah, you can't get hold of melatonin.
I didn't know that. Because it's a hormone, is that why?
Yeah, it's the same with DHEA. You can't get that. Huh. Yeah. Whereas I know that's like, in America, you can readily get both of those. You can't here. It works the same as it does with testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, all the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of stupid because melatonin, I know it's a hormone, but it's not like other hormones that you mentioned. There's no negative feedback loop with melatonin, meaning if you take melatonin exogenously through supplementation, your body will still produce the same melatonin, even if it's massive amounts, even if it's for months. Versus when you take testosterone or DHEA or progesterone, yeah, there's going to be less being produced endogenously because you're taking it exogenously. But with melatonin, there's no negative feedback loop. So that doesn't make sense, but I don't think they understand that. Hopefully one day you could get melatonin over the counter. That'd be great.
Yeah, whenever I travel to the US, I can get some because
there you go.
Need it. I mean, but at that level that you're talking about there, were you experiencing any kind of grogginess or?
I wasn't, but I've had some people who do. So some people are sensitive to it. Suppository is the best method for that because it's more of a slow release. You would take like an hour before bed, but some people are sensitive to it. So you might want to take less or take it a little bit earlier and kind of experiment with it. But yeah, some people do get groggy from it.
It's really interesting that. I mean, one of the things I've noticed is like, and the research is confirming this now, is just how much more important sleep timing is compared to, and sleep quality necessarily compared to duration. And I know that, even when I'm looking at, there's a test here in the UK called Glycan Age where you can measure your the glycans in your body, right? And it's a marker of inflammation. And I was looking at those, and I managed to get mine down to 20, which was like the lowest biological age. I
Awesome.
wasn't sleeping loads, but I'm very disciplined about when I go to sleep, when I wake up, and my stress levels. I always say you can only coach up to your level of recovery, like you were saying on that graph, right? So
That's
it's
good.
like if we're not matching the recovery, and I think all those things, the diet, everything makes a huge difference. And just understanding when you're under stress, right, in life.
Yeah, exactly. And we have these gadgets like the Oura Ring and Garmin watches and Whoop band. It shows you exactly like your resting heart rate overnight. It shows you your body temperature, your deep sleep, your REM sleep, and of course your HRV. These are all valuable insights to see if you're doing too much stress or not enough stress. I know we're wrapping up on time here, and I'm going to bring you on my podcast, but I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that chapter 10 in this book, Angela, it's going to be your favorite part of the book, because it's all about how your thoughts influence your metabolism and longevity. And it gets a lot into psychocybernetics, the self-image, and Bob Proctor's work.
Oh, I'm going to love
You are
it.
going to love. It's
I
my
will.
favorite chapter in the book, by the way.
Oh, that's super exciting. I remember when we first connected, we were talking about, both you and I are big fans of Bob Proctor. And then
Yeah.
he sadly, actually, he passed away as I was coming to the end of his program, which was super sad for me.
Wow.
Because before I was able to complete it, and his work was just magical. Still continues to be, right? It lives on.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm really excited to read that chapter.
You're going to love it. I want to hear your thoughts. I study Bob every single morning. I've listened to the ultimate Bob Proctor library collection on Audible. I'm on my 37th listen right now. I'm going to I just listen to it, finish, and I replay, listen to it, finish, and replay. It's just, his work is incredible. So chapter 10 has his fingerprints all over it. You're going to love it. We get into the placebo effect, nocebo effect, gratitude, the value of living on purpose with your purpose, the study of longevity on that. It's the best chapter in the book. It's right up your alley as well.
That's super exciting. As I, and it will be to my listeners. I was having a conversation just the other day with some of my program members, about how challenging it can feel at first when you're getting older and you're thinking, oh, I'm like the other side. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of this year, I'll cross 50, I'll go the other side of that mark. But actually, if you look at it a different way, and this is where your mindset really comes into your health, right? And we see it in aging studies. People age more slowly if they have a positive mindset towards aging. Yes. And you can be biologically younger, right? There's proof there. Yes. So yeah, I can't wait to read that. Ben, when is it out? How can people connect with you? I know you have a really big community, huge following, great podcast. Please share how people can connect with you and also get hold of the book.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks for bringing me back and having a great conversation. I'm excited to bring you on my pod right now in a few minutes. The book is available over at metabolicfreedombook.com. We have a special bonus for those who order on that website, where you're going to get an entire course on the metabolism for free, designed by me, all about the metabolism. Along with that course, there are exclusive interviews in that course that you cannot find anywhere else, with Dr. Jason Fung, Gary Brecka, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, and Dr. Daniel Pompa that we put into the course. All that's for free. When you go to metabolicfreedombook.com, you're going to buy the book. It's available on hardcover, Audible, and Kindle. I narrated the Audible myself. And then you're going to put your name, email, and order number, and you're automatically sent that free course with the interview. So if you're listening to this during pre-order, you could get it, or after the fact, you could still get it over at metabolicfreedombook.com. The book is officially going to be released on May 13th, 2025.
Super exciting. We'll link to all of that in the show notes, and also your website, your Instagram. Can you link to all of that on your podcast as well?
Yeah, well, benazadi.com has everything. So just go to my main website, benazadi.com, and you could see my podcast, YouTube, Instagram, all that's on there.
All the fun stuff. Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. I'm super excited now to come and jump over onto your show.
Yes.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate you.
You too.